What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today we're going to do a Grave equals Zorga deck profile for Standard. I'm excited for this because Zorga really got an upgrade, and so let's talk about some of the things that are mitigated now and also some of the cool interactions that we can focus on too. So let's get right into it.
Check out Next Level Gaming's playmats, and they actually have a lot of mats with your favorite units. They're great quality playmats too as well, and you can use the affiliated link as a 10% discount on your next purchase. Also, I've become an official Metafy coach for Cardfight Vanguard, and so if you ever want to get one-on-one time with me to help your skill level, go ahead and book a session with me. I can help with premium format, standard, or even clans like Aquaforce and many others, and even YouTube as well. I just want to help fellow amigos and make an impact within the community itself. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message too. You can use the link down below in the description to book your session as well.
So starting off with Winning Image, so with Grave equals Zorga, it is, in my eyes, a consistency improvement from the blue one. They each have pros and cons, the way that you want to look at it, but I'm going to focus on what I appreciate the most is really the added consistency. So where that comes from is the second skill. It's an act. Once per turn, you can Soul Blast, discard a card, and then you can choose a normal order from your drop and add it to your hand. And so that's the big thing, because with blue Zorga, there was no way by itself to get the right orders that you wanted to use in order to do Alchemagic, and you had to rely on different cards to help you with that, whether it be grabbing from the drop zone or the bind zone, like that kind of stuff. This has it in one card, so which is really cool. And so you can discard orders with like the right line, for example, and then of course like Rancor Chain, for example, and you can set up your graveyard or drop zone, I should say, in a way that you're pretty much every single turn guaranteed to Alchemagic the way you want to. So the primary beaters that you want to still capitalize are Roaming Prison Dragons, and so you want to at least get 2, so that way when you perform Alchemagic, these pop out on their own. They get plus 10k and a crit, so they're 15k on their own. But thanks to Zorga's first skill, is that if you did Alchemagic this turn, then all of your whole front row gets plus 5k until the end of the turn. So it's a passive 5k blanket in a sense. And if you combine it with Clouded Miasma, this is kind of less one. Choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop zone, call it to rear guard, and if this card was part of Alchemagic, then choose one of your vanguards and it gets the red tech skill, where all of your front units get an additional 5k until the end of the turn. So again, that adds up for a total of 10k buff in the front row. That doesn't even include in Persona Writing. So if you do Persona Writing, it's a plus 20k to the front row. And I emphasize that because with orders such as like Nectar and other cards, they need to target rear guards to be able to give the power up and crit and stuff. These Prison Dragons come out after you play Alchemagic, so they miss out on that, and so that's why that blanket in a sense is just much more efficient. And to pair it up, once you have a field set up, a card that I like to pair it in Alchemagic is Ye Wandering Souls. This actually, pay the cost, discard an order card, and your vanguard gets an additional drive check. So this makes Zorga triple drive, which is good because in my eyes, when the right lane's got like Magnolia Elder, Seraph Purelight, and other cards like that, they actually had the triple drive inherently, and I felt like they had more of an advantage, especially since we have triggers in the game. So more than likely you'll see triggers that way. And so now Zorga has that way more consistency, more reliably, without like sacrificing too much, to pair it up with the Prison Dragons that are much more threatening. And to make the columns even more beefy, we have Rogue Headhunter from the prior sets. This card is good because it's just plus 5k when you play an order, easy to do. And then of course it reduces Alchemagic by 1 Counterblast, and it stacks if you have multiple too. But this becomes a 13k booster and a beater if you really need to be. But now 13k plus like a 15k, that makes 28. And any of the power-ups that you have, let's say plus 10k, makes 38, plus 20k makes 48k. So it makes really for solid numbers with that crit pressure. So this is ideally going to be your booster most of the time, and that's going to be primarily your winning image for the most part. Everything else is more supplementary to help that, and also some different scenarios that you may have to mitigate as well. So I'm going to start going into the card choices now. First off, with the right line, it can be any starter. I like this one because of the art and its SP. We have Rancor Chain and Hush Dragon, so these are still imperative for Zorga. Again, this is like the way to draw into 2 cards in total in advantage. So when you ride this Soul Blast 1, draw 2, discard an order, and if you didn't, discard 2. So you want to mulligan for the orders for sure, so that way you're able to plus 1. But then once you get to Hush Dragon, you'll just grab back that order and actually get that plus 1 again. So a plus 2 cards in hand, which is super efficient, helpful, because you want to get to your pieces faster too, so that way you can start setting up your drop zone properly. And then Zorga, of course, we've already talked about his skills, so this is really the right line. Onto the grade 3 normal units, we are playing more copies of the Grave equals Zorga. You want to Persona Write, take advantage of that too. so it's imperative to play max copies. It's really nice that I got the SPs. I am still waiting on the last Prison Dragon though. The struggle is real, right? And so for Prison Dragon, because you want to maximize that so you can see it as soon as possible, the key factor is that you need to see 2 as fast as possible. Hopefully in the future we are able to multi-attack during the battle phase, which we can capitalize on the front row power buff. But it's just something that, like, if you can maximize this guy, hard mulligan for it, and then using the right line mechanic, you can discard it and immediately set that up. So you're pretty much good to go. And the rest are just Plethoras to use for extra. Onto the order cards now. We are playing 10 in total. We're playing 3 Cloud of Miasma, 2 Wandering Souls, 1 Ideal Far Away, 2 Tier 4 Malice, and 2 Wild Intelligence. And so the basis is really Cloud of Miasma and Yay Wandering Souls, so that's why I played 3 copies of Cloud of Miasma. You want to see it as soon as possible, and I feel like 3 is a right number. You could opt it for 4, and I've seen deck profiles do that, and it might be too cluttered at that point, but it's really how soon and how urgent that you want it. But I feel like it's the foundation card that you're going to use with any of these other orders, and so that's why at least 3 to 4 copies, I definitely recommend that too. It really replaces like the pseudo call or the superior call from the old Zorga 2, and then because you're focusing on Prison Dragons to revive themselves, you really just concentrate on a booster in a sense, or maybe you can return a PG in that example, and if you have a Shadow Cloak in that point, you can actually bounce that back and get more defensive quality too. So there's some flexibility in that too, and just really good synergy. It essentially replaces GDR from the Blue Zorga too, so you can see it that way while reviving something. Wandering Souls, I've tried 3 at first. It's a really good card, and it's often the card that I actually mill with Shadow Cloak first to make sure it's in the drop zone outside of Cloud of Miasma. And the reason is because it has a cost to discard an order, and there have been times where if you don't have an order to pay for the cost for that, it's hard to Alchemy Magic just like that. So the way you look at it, it's like you need 3 order cards into that combo play. These 2 and then the 1 to ditch for that. So it's just one of those things where, like, let me redo this to 2 and then let me see if I can mitigate something else. And one of the things that I added was a second Tier 4 Malice. I felt like against a smart player, they know that they should keep the Prison Dragons on my board because I want to revive them with Alchemy. And the reason is for that is because the Prison Dragons plus 10k and a crit are only for the turn that it's revived, and so you had to kind of get rid of them. This retires 2 rear guards, and then you can draw a card, and then of course put this card into soul, and you countercharge as well. So this helps with resources, get those Prison Dragons out of the field. And what's really cool, order cards are different from normal unit cards. So how cost and skill work, like with normal units, cost and skill are pretty much together, and they are in a queue, almost in a sense. So you resolve 1 cost skill at the same at one point, and then you go to the next card, or you can move them around, that kind of thing. But when it comes to orders, when you play the order, the costs, even if you do Alchemy Magic, is paid first. And because the retired 2 rearguards is cost, it retires the Prison Dragons, puts them in the drop zone, and then the next part of it is actually resolving the skills, which then Prison Dragon and a card like Prison Dragon can now see it and actually revive it in the same Alchemy Magic turn play. So at first it's just very, very confusing, and it's like, why does it work this way and not like normal Vanguard stuff? Is this Yu-Gi-Oh? Is this Vanguard, or what is it? But I wanted to clarify it in that fashion, comparing it to kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh in a sense too. So I hope that makes sense. If not, just let me know down in the comments below too. It's just how that works, so you can do that. So if anybody has questions, like, you can do that with Prison Dragon, the answer is yes. You can do that too. Now, slightly different with Wild Intelligence. So I'm playing 2 cards of this. What I noticed is that really the only thing that use Counterblast is really the Cloud of Miasma, and there's another grade 1 that I played too as well. So there's room for orders that use Counterblast, and you have a card that in the Rogue Headhunter that actually reduces the Counterblast for Alchemy Magic. So if you already pop 1, it's 1 less to work with. So if you do Alchemy Magic with these 2 cards, then it's 1 CB that you need to use. If you pop down 2 Rogue Headhunters, then it's free CB. So it is not as hurtful. And then this is a card that you can also play in the early game because it's a grade 0. While this is like grade 3, this is grade 2, so you can play this on the grade 2 turn. And I'll show a combo off too that shows these cards in action that actually matter in the early game too as well. And what it does is that you could discard 3 cards from the top of your deck, and then choose a card with the same grade as your Vanguard or lower, and then call it to a rearguard circle. And then obviously if you have the Sylvan, Horn, King, Magnolia, you can actually revive 2, but we're always going to revive 1 in this deck. So this is really nice to have in case you need to build a bigger board. If you don't have the Prison Dragons already there, or maybe you can call a second booster in case you have an empty field against certain matchups. Flagberg is a good example that continuously will retire your field depending on their setup as well. So it's just one of those things that helps out with that. And then you can use in the early game, which I'll show off to have some aggression. And also really get a chance to use your orders early on. And they'll go to the drop anyway. So you get to really use them as early as possible and then really prepare them for the Alchemagic turns too coming up. And lastly over here, we have In Search of an Ideal Far Away. So if you've noticed with these cards, they all have some type of cost. This is Counterblast 1, discard an order card, retire 2 rearguards, and another Counterblast here. There are times where you may not have the following resources to pay for the total Alchemagic. So having a card like Ideal Far Away is free. All it does is says you choose one of your units, and until the end of the turn, it gets the red text. Where when your other unit attacks, this gets plus 5k until the end of the turn. This is an auto. So what happens is that you can actually target this to a booster, for example. And because Zorga is a 3 attack deck, if you put it on the booster, that boost lasts on the last column. It'll see that attack and get another plus 5k, making it a plus 15k power up too. So that's actually pretty important, especially if you want to do like a Prison Dragon big beefy column on top of what it already does. So if you do 48k plus 15, that's already 63k, not including triggers. So you can see how that can help you be aggressive and help with that too. This can help with the early game too, and I'll show that playoff where you can actually beef up a Prison Dragon on the grade 2 turn that can make it harder for your opponent to guard early on and potentially put them to 3 damage already off the back that way too. Now onto the rest of the deck with normal units. We are playing 4 Shadowcloak, 4 Rogue Headhunter for the PG, and 1 of the Actia Sticky, whatever, the Adhesive Thread monster, sure, let's call it that. So Shadowcloak is really mandatory, so that way you can selectively mill the orders that you don't have in the drop zone currently. So if you can call this early game, like grade 2 turn, or even like your grade 3 turn, you're in a very good position. So that way, if you already have the hard mulligan order that you normally would have anyway, you can get a second one that works with your current conditions, your game state. So that's super helpful. The second skill is that when you play an order, you can Soul Blast 1, this unit gets plus 5k until the end of the turn. And then if of course it was Alchemagic, then you could choose another rearguard and actually bounce it to your hand. So be wary of this. Do keep in mind that the new Zorga uses a Soul Blast every single turn in order to perform Alchemagic to begin with. And so the soul is much more important, and as you notice, we're not playing in any Hendrina, so that's why I would recommend just be wary of Shadowcloaks. Use it only when it really makes sense, especially if you know you can guarantee like a Persona ride the following turn, because then you'll get another card in soul that way too, and be good for an Alchemagic turn too as well. So I definitely play max copies, and also it's just one of those cards that you can rely on outside of Hush Dragon in case you don't have your Prison Dragons to really start forming a little bit of beef columns in that sense too. And we have the Rogue Headhunters. We want to play max copies because we want to have that 13k booster again for those columns. It's if you have the third one for the Vanguard, even better. Especially when you have triple drive, it's a lot harder to deal with a Vanguard on top of the Prison Dragons that way. So more power to you. And then the PGs, we want to maximize on PGs too. The thing with Zorga too, as if you played the original Zorga, you realize that sometimes your hand can get cluttered of order cards and they are worthless in shield value. So they're dead cards, and so having a PG being able to discard an unnecessary order really goes a long way, and that's why I would play 4 copies. I've seen other people that reduce it to 3. In fact, sometimes I tried to build where I just took them all out, but it was just a different time. But obviously Zorga's in a much better place, so I definitely recommend the 4. And over here, 1 of the Adhesive Thread monster. What this does is it's an act once per turn. You can Counterblast, retire 2 of your rearguards, draw a card, and then this unit gets plus 5k until the end of the turn. So it's like, why would you do this, right? The main thing, again, just like I mentioned with Prison Dragon, the only way to get rid of them if they're stuck on the field is using Alchemagic with Tearful Malice. But maybe you don't want to Alchemagic that way. You want to actually have more push. It could be the extra drive check. It could be the Ideal Far Away with the Cloud of Miasma. So this can kind of like take care of that for you, draw you a card, and then this becomes a 13k booster for those Prison Dragons too on top of that. So it's almost like the 5th 13k booster. And I think at 1 is nice. Just be wary of using its counterblast too. Yes, we have Rogue Headhunters, but depending if you're seeing them or not, you could lock yourself out of CB, which can hurt your Alchemy Magic plays too. On to the triggers. So we are still playing the 8 crit, and we have the Blessed Favor over trigger. 4 heals for sure. So the only really difference that has changed before is the new heals that we've recently got these past set or two, and also the draw triggers. So with the blue Zorga build, I actually ran fronts because it was just a lot more needed to have that push. There were 20k shields, so it helped with that. You're using Hendrina to mill more cards, so a draw trigger would kind of hurt you more than it would help you in the long term if you view it that way. But now we're not as aggressively milling, we are more selectively. We're able to use the right line mechanic to discard. We can use Zorga to discard and really set up our drop zone really well. And I keep repeating myself for that, but it's very essential. So the draw triggers, what I noticed is Zorga still struggles building a big hand. Compared to Magnolia with Inland Pulses, that deck builds a lot of good hand. And so draw triggers help with Zorga, especially if you're going to triple drive. There's a chance that not only you'll be able to see crits, but now draw triggers, right? So that's super helpful. Depending on the matchup that you're playing against, you may end up attacking with 1 Prison Dragon first if they're at 4 damage. So your Vanguard may not necessarily have to attack first, so you can still take advantage of the draw triggers if Zorga's not attacking the first battle. And then the heal triggers, these are the arts I like. I wanted to tech one of these cards too, where there's 2 different ones. This one is the crit, so if your Rigard, if the attacking unit has crit that is 2 or greater, that isn't due to triggers, this gets an additional plus 15k shield, so this becomes a 25k shield. This is helpful in the mirror match. This is helpful against the Pure Light Seraph matchup because they can give crit with once they reach 10 cards. You can play the other one that counts if this unit attacked twice already. That might be more prevalent. I'm still kind of experimenting, so think of this as a flex spot in that sense too. I feel though the 3-1 ratio is good because you can rely on these being 15k 15k shields in general. And then when you really need that one instance where you can kind of save a card or two using a card like this, that really comes into play once you see it. You could also grab it back with like the Cloud of Miasma to revive it and then use like Shadow Cloak to bounce it back. So if you do mill it or soul charge it or something crazy, ends up in the damage zone, or you're able to reuse it too as well, so you can see that kind of like synergy too. So onto some basic plays that I tend to do too. So let's say you're going first, you right into your grade 2. If you discard it with a right line mechanic, you can have a Prison Dragon in the drop zone. Let's just say that's our drop, and also have access to some of the orders that we can play early on. Just to show a few, I'll show a cool one with Wandering Souls first. So let's say you activate Wandering Souls and you discard one of these orders. You'll go extra drive, so your grade 2 now has twin drive, and because Prison Dragon was in the drop, it'll call itself. You can give it plus crit or power. On this example, I'll do plus crit, and then you have a unit like Rogue Headhunter that you can call early on. It's okay. I mean, you can revive them later on too, or get them, or just get more copies. So it's not the end of the world if you use one too early. And again, you use an order, so this is a 13k booster, 5k, so this is 18k crit 2 already. Your opponent's Vanguard is 8k, so depending on the setup that they have, if they have another rear guard, you can do the safe route where the Vanguard can attack the rear guard and do twin drive. You drive check any triggers onto this column. This can now attack Vanguard and deal 2 damage, and then if you got another crit, that could potentially go 3 damage, 4 damage, especially if you have twin drive, the nuts, right? If you attack the Vanguard, there is a chance that they get a trigger, makes them 18k. So now 18k makes it a 5k shield that they drop. So the other route to do, instead of the crit, you can do the power, where now instead of being 18k, this is 28k, but just 1 crit. And you can have twin drive, for example, or just normal drive. And then again, this can be another attack that they have to deal with. So you can get 2 attacks in that way. Now that's one play. Let's say you call the Rogue Headhunter first, and you play the order Ideal Far Away, and you put it on the booster. This will see it. This can be plus crit. This I feel is a little more stronger too because of the power that's focused onto this. You can attack Vanguard as a 10k base. This triggers, gets plus 5k. Any triggers onto here, and then again, this will trigger seeing this attack. So this will be plus 10k, so this will be 28k crit 2. And as you can see, that's a little more pressure to be aggressive in that sense too. With Wild Intelligence, one of the things, if you see this early on, you can call it with it if your mill wasn't that great here, and then this will revive itself. And the reason I use this is because it adds to the soul, and then plus 2 here. If you're going second, this is now 20k. So that actually hits that magic number for against a grade 2 10k base. So that's something that I wanted to point out. The last thing that I want to show in this turn too as well is what happens if you have 2 Prison Dragons by discarding them with the mulligan and the right line mechanic, and then maybe another booster. This happened in one of my recent locals. Shout out to Roy. He actually had a rough time with this turn, so I played an order. I believe it was Yay Wandering Souls as well, so I got Twin Drive, and then these came back, and they're just plus crit, both of them. And this was the weakest one, so I was like, let me poke with this first. So this is 13k crit 2. He said no guard, so he went from 0 to 2, and then I was like, okay, no triggers on this damage check. Then attack this. I was like, just to be safe, 18k crit 2 again. He took it again. I was like, holy crap. Now he's at 4 damage. And then I'm like, all right, let's go Vanguard to Vanguard, Twin Drive. And he said no guard. And I was like, really? Fortunately, I didn't get any triggers that are crits. And he went to 5 damage. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen every time. But if you have both Prison Dragons, they now have to deal with this too, especially if you're going first. They still had to catch up to their grade 3 turn, so they're like, oh crap, this I have to keep dealing with, because 5 plus 8 is 13, 5 plus 8 is 14. Worst case scenario, you can use this guy to even retire these next turn, and then if you red up, then you can use your Alchemagic. They come back, and now they're like super like optimized plays, so you can really abuse them in that sense too. So I just wanted to show like the early game potential. Another thing to do as a bonus combo in the early game, let's say you use the Ideal Far Away and put it in the booster here, so this combo becomes big. If you have a Shadow Cloak, then you can set it up, right? And then this has like the L shape, kind of like what we've seen before, where you can attack Rearguard first, then attack with the Vanguard. They have to like no pass or regarded, and then any drive checks can go here. By default, this will be plus 15 now to this booster. So since you played an order, it's 13 plus 15. This is 28 already, and 28 plus 5 is 33 with a crit. So you can see that if you do open up with this card, this actually is pretty nutty. The more attacks that you can do, and they may not be expecting that aggression too. I wanted to show that out too, but it may come up. So if you want to do that route, it might be even more of a reason to play a second Ideal Far Away as well. But it's just something that I kind of experimenting and learning as I go too. Now let's say you've already Alchemagic the prior turn, and you're coming to your next turn where you can actually Persona Ride. And let's say they dealt some damage to you and they kept your Prison Dragons in front. So you may have boosters already from the prior turn as well. So you can Persona Ride, draw a card, and plus 10k to the front row. You can use Zorga Scale to discard something and get like Cloud of Miasma back to hand. And then you can use this card to Counterblast, pop these now, draw a card, and then plus 5k into the end of the turn. Now that you have that, you can use Alchemagic to Counterblast, and then depending on what you have to, let's say we go Triple Drive with this. So now this will come back and then call any booster from the Cloud of Miasma as well. So if you want a big booster, you can call a second one, Red Hut Hunter. So now your field looks like this, and again, the whole front row is plus 20k. These are 13k boosters, so if your Vanguard will attack first, this is Triple Drive. So this is 33 plus a 13k booster is 46k with Triple Drive. Any triggers, you can put them on the dragons, 48k and 48k. Any triggers, even bigger. That is really the winning image for Zorga, as simple as it gets. It's just really setting up, making sure you're thinking ahead, and just doing your thing. And that's it for the deck profile, amigos. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you learned a lot from it too as well. I know this deck has been really fun for me. It's just like Grand Blue in Premium or V Premium, and it's just like, it's still Zorga, right? And it's just appreciated in the consistency. You can fix your hand quality a little bit better too, so you actually have some defensive shield. Even though Zorga can't really build a big hand, you might as well optimize what you got. And it really makes it where you have to put the time and effort into the deck to actually start playing it well too. And it can pay off pretty well too, because Prison Dragons, putting your opponent at 4 is like the ideal situation, because then they have to guard everything, essentially. And then you can even do plays where the Vanguard can attack the rearguard, and then you can be safe where you can kind of keep them at 4 damage if you know that you can't really push that turn. So you might as well just like kind of keep them in those low resources, because some decks want to take a damage to be able to counter blast for the following turn to be able to push and, you know, win that turn. But if you can deny it, that's even better too. So, you know, obviously there's more orders to play with. 2 orders that really come to mind for most people are Spiritual Body Condensation and Nectar as well. And Spiritual Body Condensation uses Soul, so keep in mind that Zorga is going to use Soul Blast every single turn, and we're not playing Hendrina, so it doesn't mitigate that Soul Blast cost. So that's why I don't play it. If you play Hendrinas, then maybe I can see that as well. If you play Nectar, just keep in mind that you can't Nectar onto a Prison Dragon, because when you play the Alchemagic, those targets aren't there yet. So there's no point in doing that unless you have like some other beater, like where is it? Like a Shadow Cloak or something that you give, you know, plus 15k in a crit, right? That can make it help consistently making sure that you're just lethal in that sense, which is not bad too. So you can play one of Nectar, you can do it that way too. Now that Magnolia Elder is getting hit and that's effective soon in the next couple of weeks, I feel like Zorga might be a good top pick. There's also Flagberg too to experiment with too. I've been playing that too, and it's a pretty solid deck too. There are different variations of Magnolia still too, so don't discount it. So if you are really a Magnolia player and you're like huge into it, then you can adapt to it with the ban list in mind too. And if you really like Zorga content, you can actually check out the next video that I'm pointing out here, where it can go into premium, where it actually meshes Mega Connolly's new Stride from the P-Clan Collection 2022 with Zorga Alchemagic behind it too, and abusing Prison Dragons even on Stride turns, where you could potentially get 3 Prison Dragon attacks with plus crit and stuff like that. So it's just really cool just to see that too. So, and if you saw this video worth with value, please feel free to share it to another card fighter such as yourself that would appreciate Zorga or Sorkea as well. On to the next one, amigos. Thanks again. Bye.